Dear friends, you saw the pictures, the photos of those blessed martyrs of Iran from 1978 to 1986. These are the people who recognized the truth, and they stood firm and they gave their blood to nourish this tree of the cause of God. You see, if you study the revelation of Baha'u'llah, God through Baha'u'llah says that at the beginning, the most important thing that you could do for God in return for all the bounties that God has given you is to give your life. You hear, then this is nothing to do with only with the Baha'i faith. You see, if you read the history of the early Christians, you see that is exactly the same it was. The Romans at that time, they had a most advanced civilization on earth, and the name of Rome and the power of Rome was everything for people. But these sincere early believers in our Lord Jesus Christ, they stood firm in their faith for the message of God that Jesus brought for mankind, and they were ready to give their lives for them. And then he trained eventually 12 disciples, that one of them eventually denied him. But then they chose, when we read the Acts of the Apostles, that they chose another instead of the one that left them, and again they became 12 disciples, and they had the most perfect consultation together, and they decided to forget everything and to try and teach the Gospels to mankind, until we have nowadays thousands and millions of people everywhere, Christians, believing in Gospels, believing in our Lord Jesus Christ. Although Jesus himself was crucified for the sake of the faith that he was proclaiming. If you read the early history of all the religions of the world, you will see that the early followers were subject to persecution and hardship and suffering until they could establish the will of God on earth. Some, they get martyred, the rest of them, they spend their lives proclaiming, teaching, and living the life that the manifestation of God has prescribed for them. Now, Baha'u'llah, later, when he was in exile in Akka, wrote that God no longer wants you to willingly go and get martyred yourself. You see, those people that you saw their pictures didn't go voluntarily, didn't go and fight with anybody, or didn't talk in such a way to be martyred. They just found that they are registered Baha'is, and they went and caught them and they said, deny your faith. They didn't deny. But they didn't themselves go voluntarily and deliberately to get martyred. Why? Because Baha'u'llah says, in this age, now God doesn't want you to get martyred anymore. But he wants you to do something instead, and that is to share his teachings with mankind, to teach the faith. Among those people who really realized the significance of this statement of Baha'u'llah were the American believers in the United States and the Canadian believers in Canada, that they realized the significance of this statement, that now, that they have to be living martyrs. Meaning, although they are alive and they are going to live a normal life, but they are going to sacrifice their earnings and their time for promotion of the faith of God. They call themselves, they are living martyrs. See? Among the living martyrs that we have, I've mentioned several times, hands of the cause of God. These people from 5 continents of the globe, that they distinguished themselves by sacrificing their time and energy in promotion of the faith of God. I am going to show you the pictures of these blessed hands of the cause of God, that in very critical times in the history of the Baha'i faith, especially from 1957 until 1963, when the infallible institution of the faith, the Universal House of Justice, was elected, they safeguarded the faith of God, they protected the Baha'i international community, and then led them to the time in 1963 when they the Baha'is all over the world elected the Universal House of Justice. And then, until they died, they served the faith of God. They thought of nothing more important than sharing the message of God and protecting the faith of God, the cause of God. Look at them, they are from all nationalities. If you want to read the account of their lives, read the Baha'i volumes, the Baha'i world volumes that gives the details of their lives. And here are some brief notes that I have photocopied from the Baha'i world volumes. And the list of their names. And then, now, these are the apostles of Baha'u'llah. These are the foremost teachers and apostles and the hands at the time of Baha'u'llah. Some of them were martyred, some of them lived their lives and shared the faith with the people in the world. These are the 4 known hands of the cause of God at the time of Baha'u'llah. I don't know if you can focus for the friends to can see the names underneath them, if possible, rather than me reading every name there. just I want you to know that some of the hands were called the hands of God posthumously, after they died or after they were martyred. But some of them were given the title the hand of the cause of God while they were still alive. Can you start from the top here, the hands, and gradually go all of them with their names? Please forgive me if in one page maybe I have repeated and put the photocopy of the picture of one hand again. And this is some of the hands together, the photograph of them. Now, you see, dear friends, these martyrs, these hands of the cross, and all the other believers who devoted their time and energy and sacrificed their own interest for the sake of God, under the guidance of the manifestation of God, and under Abdul Baha, the master, under the Shoghi Effendi, the guardian, they have developed a Baha'i community which was only established in 1844 in Iran, so that it is now spread to every nation, every continent of the world, and the literature of the faith has been translated to over 800 languages. And the Baha'i international community has been recognized by the United Nations, and I am glad to tell you that the Baha'i community in the world cooperated with the League of Nations after the First World War, and the United Nations after the Second World War, and since 1970, at the request of the United Nations, they have established their offices as non-governmental organizations, which in brief is NGO, in the United Nations in New York, and the Baha'i international community has been asked to act as advisor to the United Nations. This has been the result of sacrifice of thousands and thousands of the witnesses who have worked diligently to spread the message of God for this age, under the guidance of Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, Shoghi Effendi, and now our beloved Universal House of Justice. All right, dear friends, when we want to change the world now and establish a new world order, the world order of God, the world order of Baha'u'llah on it, and we have become self-sacrificing, and we have acquired the spirit of faith to do this, still we have to have plans. And before we can draw up any plans, we have to have a, what they call it, position audit. Means, what is the situation at the moment? What is it like, the whole world? What is it like at the moment that you want to change? That's why I have got this from a friend, and I'm going to show it to you and share it with you. If you could focus on this part, especially this part of it, You see, the world we have now, imagine our world as it is now, reduced to the size of a village of 100 people. If that were to happen, then of those world citizens, 57 would be Asian, 21 would be European, 14 would be American, North and South, 8 would be African, 30 would be white, 6 would own half the total wealth of the village. 6, notice this, 6 would own half the total wealth of the village. 30 would be able to read. What does it mean? It means 70 are not going to be, they are not able to read. They are illiterate. 50 would be undernourished, malnutrition, you see. 80 would live in substandard housing. 1 would have education up to university standard. This is the world the Baha'is are working to change. Now, if you want to change the world, first you have to have authority. The authority comes from God. And then through His manifestation, and now through the revelation that He is given, an interpretation that Abdul Baha and the Master and Shoghi Afandi the Guardian have given, but we have got the universal house of justice to apply that revelation, those laws, those interpretations, to build a new world and educate and train the people on earth. But universal house of justice, in order to do that, they have had to have plans to do it. Even before the universal house of justice, if you remember carefully, what I said at the very beginning of the course, when I was talking about where are we historically, I told you that after the ascension, after Abdul Baha passed away in 1921, we had Baha'is in different locations in the world, but we did not have proper organization yet, meaning the laws of Kitab Aqdas regarding the election of the spiritual assemblies, which later will be called the House of Justice, in every town and village, was not implemented yet. There was no national assemblies in the world yet. There was no universal house of justice in the world yet. So, from 1921 until 1946, what God, the guardian, our beloved guardian, did was to give the Baha'is plans until 1946 to establish local assemblies, spiritual assemblies, and national assemblies. But according to a systematic planning, this was achieved. And the writings were interpreted. and made the Baha'is to understand where they are going, and then let the whole world know where the people of the world were going. Now, when we reached the 1953, the Guardian gave the Baha'is of the world in the 5 continents of the world a plan which we call 10-year plan, or 10-year crusade, 10-year spiritual crusade, which Guardian called upon the Baha'is of the world, especially Iranian Baha'is and American Baha'is, to pioneer to different cities and countries of the world in order to share the message of God with the people of that country and that town and that city. That needed sacrifice, uprooting the people. They devotedly implemented, these instructions of the Guardian, the guidance of the Guardian, and obeyed it. And they left their home, their town, their country, and with great difficulties, but with great joy, they went and settled in different countries and different towns and cities across the world until these people were established the faith in these countries. Because of this, the Guardian called these people the Knights of Baha'u'llah. That plan was from 1953 until 1963, when Guardian said the Universal House of Justice is going to be elected. That 10-year crusade, 1953 to 1963, which Guardian planned it, gave guidance to people, people with great faith departed from their homeland and scattered around the world and established the faith. Now, in 1992, which was the anniversary of the centenary of the ascension of Baha'u'llah, you see, we said Baha'u'llah passed away in 1892. So, in 1992, which was 100 years after his ascension, the Universal House of Justice wrote the name of all those people who left their country and they traveled to and pioneered and settled in other countries in order to establish the faith on a roll of honor, which I'm going to show you now. And then they dug the hole. They, at the threshold of the shrine of Baha'u'llah, near the mansion of Bahji, and they buried this at the threshold, the original of this roll of honor. And they immortalized their names, these people, by becoming the Knights of Baha'u'llah, by establishing the faith in every country in the world. And the scroll that I'm going to show you contains the name of the Knights of Baha'u'llah that pioneered and established the faith in the 5 continents of the world between 1953 and 1963, and here it is now. Please show this. these blessed people, these living martyrs, if you can go as close as you can to them and go slowly, if I can put it up a bit. That's better. Is it good? And you go from the very top. God bless them. God bless them. Now you see, they had the opportunity to serve the cause of God, and they did it, and they immortalized their names forever by sacrificing their time and energy to serve the cause of God and to obey the guidance of the beloved guardian Shoghi Afandi until the faith was established in these countries around the world. Now, it is now our turn to do the same. However, in the manner that I'm going to tell you in a second now. I'm going to pause now a bit and then we start again. Dear friends, I'm very grateful to one of the friends present here that pointed out that when I was explaining about the Universal House of Justice and the learned arm, when we came to counselor, I made a mistake. It has to be counselor. And naturally, Continental Board of Counselor. Thank you very much for this reminder. Now, we were discussing the sharing of the faith with our families, with friends, with countrymen in a systematic way according to plans given to us by our beloved Universal House of Justice and the guidance of this infallible institution that we have. a gift of God to humanity. Now, let's examine this a little further. Let's examine this a little further. If you remember the earlier sessions, when we were talking about a human being, I'm just putting this to remind you. We were saying, if you wanted to, for example, to make a carpet, you would have to have a frame and then you would have strings, horizontal and vertical one. And we said, in a human being, you have been given these warp and woofs, or some, they say wefts, warp and woofs, which is your inherited character and innate character. Right? The character that you have inherited through your father and grandfather and great-grandfather and mother, and also the character that God has given you through your spirit, the innate character. And we said that the capacities that we have inherited and we have been given by God are not uniform, meaning that everybody doesn't have exactly the same capacity. So whatever you have inherited, your constitution, your body from your parents, you have no choice about that. And the capacities that God has given you through your spirit and soul, God has given you, and you had no say to it. But that wasn't the point, if you remember. We discussed it. What we said is, now through your own effort and education and your interaction with the environment, you are going to knit a pattern on this. You are going to knit a pattern of your own life. You are going to make of life what it is for you. However, we went further and we said, this pattern that you are knitting there, this pattern that you are knitting on this carpet, when you're making the carpet, or embroidery, or whatever you like to call it, has to be according to the will of God, which you only know through recognizing the manifestation of God for that age and obeying His commandments, obeying His laws, obeying His teachings. Now, this is an individual. Let's magnify that now. See? And again, put the society now, the whole world now, like this. You see, society is built up of individuals. Just think of one individual as being individuals in the society. When we study the Holy Scriptures carefully and deeply, we understand that the frame that we have, which means self. Number one, you get rid of the frame, you get rid of self. But you are still left with what? With that capacities that you have inherited and capacity that God has given you through your innate character, through your spirit. Once you get rid of the frame there, and you place yourself into the society, this is an individual. If you can draw this for everybody in there. That they have thrown away their individuality, they have become part of society now, but with these capabilities, with these capacities, with these talents that they have, and developed it according to the will of God. We said you develop your mind, you find the scientific knowledge, then you develop your mind, you find the spiritual knowledge and truth. You develop your heart, you discipline your feelings, you become loving and caring, and you discipline your willpower to become a man of action, to initiate an action and sustain it until you achieve the goal. But you give all these capacities to society so that the pattern that you knit on this, it will be following the overall pattern that God wants the whole world to establish. Meaning your part of the life has to contribute to the life of the humanity in large. When we say you need to have the guidance of the God, so we have got an infallible institution, the Universal House of Justice, is exactly what we mean this way. That, I don't know if you have ever been to the place where they need, they make carpets, all right? When you go to that place where they make carpet, the horizontal and the vertical cords, they are already there. And then they sit people here, individuals on the stools, and then these individuals, they have little knives, sharp instruments, and with strings, the woolen strings of different colors. But when they want to start making the carpet, each person that it is doing part of that carpet is not doing what they want. If you have been to a place, it's like this. When it is manual, you see, when it is manual, it's exactly like this. You have a person which is called the master weaver, the master carpet maker, who's sitting on a stool above all the others, and then that master has got the pattern that this carpet should be according to that. The master copied the blueprint there in front of him. All the people who are going to help making the carpet are sitting on those stools with their knives and sharp instruments and their pieces of wool with different colors. listening to the master. He says to the first one, take blue, knot it twice, cut it now. Says to the second one, you take the gray and knot 3 times and cut it down. He says to the fourth one, you take purple. The other one says, you take the, yellow, other colors, and number of knots. When you really go to a carpet makers that they are doing it in manually like this, they have got so used to it that you can't really follow what they say, what the master weaver says. Those people who are engaged in making the carpet, they've got used to the voice of this master weaver, the guider, the person who knows the plan, who knows the overall pattern and has got it. They are not concerned. They are only concerned with their bit. But they listen to the master weaver and they say, if he says, now use the red wool, they use the red wool. If he says knot it twice, they do it twice. If he says knot it once, they will do it once. If he says now use the yellow or green or other colors, they will do that. They are not going to say, oh, why should we do the, why should I do the yellow now? That is ridiculous. Because the master weaver knows what he wants to get, what sort of carpet is going to need. All the individuals not necessarily are knowing or have that vision that he has because he's got the blueprint in front of him. What the others should do, they should obey. Until a perfect carpet is knit with that pattern that is established in the mind of the master weaver. If suddenly one of these people who is helping to make the carpet starts using their own initiative and don't follow the guidance of the master weaver, a carpet that in London probably it will be sold at £100,000, it becomes worthless. Because it's not followed the same instruction. If I say, use red, he uses yellow, that's going to disturb the whole pattern. So what I am trying to tell you is this, that now that we have the guidance of the Universal House of Justice, the infallible institution that God has given us, and we have to help to create, we have to listen to them. When they give us a plan, we just implement what they say. We don't start questioning it. Otherwise, we are going to make a mess of the situation in the world. We are going to interfere with the plan of God. After all, we have elected these people there according to the will of God. And we have become humble human beings that want to help God achieve His will and wish and purpose. That's why you need plan. That's why you need guidance, because that infallible institution knows the intention of the Creator and knows what we should do through them being selfless, and through their prayer they get the guidance of God and they get to know about all the revelation of God that they have got it there, and they have been given by manifestation of God authority to do so. We have not been given authority individually to do what we like. Yes, we can develop ourselves as much as possible, then we have to put all our expertise, all our talents, all our knowledge at the disposal of the Universal House of Justice to do what they want us to do, not what we wish to do. Our wish should be their wish, meaning whatever they like, it will be what I like. Whatever they hate, it's what I hate. Because I know they are guided by the Spirit of truth, by God. Thank you now. I'm going to calm down. All right. So we know that we have to follow the master weaver's plan, the Universal House of Justice's plans. The same way that at the time of Baha'u'llah, the believers followed his guidance. At the time of Abdul Baha, followed his guidance. At the time of Shoghi Afandi, they followed his guidance. And now we are going to obey the Universal House of Justice and follow their guidance in our daily life so that we can, achieve what God desires for us to achieve. Now, there has been many plans from 1844 until now. But if I just share with you the details of one plan of the Universal House of Justice, then you will appreciate what is the plan, how to implement it, and how to understand it, and how to obey. You see, dear friends, in 1996, Universal House of Justice announced to the Baha'is of the world that they are going to start a 4-year plan. However, 3 years before this plan, they had a 3-year plan. At the beginning of that 3-year plan, they published a booklet. Now, this booklet is famous around the world now. It's been translated in many languages so that all the Baha'is in all the countries of the world can read it. All right. So during the 3-year plan, by publishing this booklet and giving guidance to us through this booklet, the Universal House of Justice tell us that if we want to achieve the goals that God has set for us, the communities should expand. The number of believers should increase. But then they say, for you to understand how does this process takes place, the process of growth, you have to study this booklet. So 3 years, remember again, 3 years before the 4-year plan, there was a 3-year plan, and during that 3-year plan, the Universal House of Justice let us have this booklet promoting entry by troops to tell us the dynamics of growth And he said, study that, understand that. I have summarized that for you, and I put it here for you to look at. Please, all of you, focus here. And if you cannot, for one reason or another, read this on the flip chart here, it is in your own course support notes, page 191. Open your course support notes, get the page 191, and now relax and listen to me. I have summarized this book for you. Promoting entry by troops. A letter, first in this booklet you read a letter from the Universal House of Justice. In this letter, the Universal House of Justice says there is a critical need for a massive expansion. Two, entry by troops, meaning people coming in great numbers to the faith of Baha'u'llah will soon become an established pattern. You see, because it is an infallible institution, when they say something, it means it's the will of God. It's going to happen. Or if we are very deep enough spiritually, we can say this is already has happened. Spiritually, it has already happened. We are only to help this process to take place. And if I don't do it individually, it doesn't matter. God doesn't need me. Somebody else will take my place. But I've lost my opportunity. Entry by troops will soon become an established pattern. So it means everywhere in the world, people are going to enter the faith in great numbers. Three, assemblies, that means the spiritual assemblies, and friends, meaning individuals, should try to understand, welcome, initiate, and sustain the process of entry by troops. It doesn't say entry by troop is going to happen just on its own. It says, first of all, you understand what does it mean. You should welcome it. You should initiate it, means to start working for the entry by troops. You try to keep this momentum, this work going, sustain it. You see, when you have developed your willpower, we said willpower is the ability to initiate action and sustain it. Means you keep at it until you achieve the goal, until you get the entry by troop. Number four, the process of entry by troops is a phenomenon which the Baha'i communities, by their own activities, can prepare for and help to bring about. So they are giving guidance. Number five, the Baha'i world needs to foster a united clarity of vision for the expansion of the cause and all its agencies. What are those agencies? Expansion of the national assemblies, expansion of the local spiritual assemblies, expansion of the councils, expansion of the the activities of the socio-economic activities of the faith. Number 6, our beloved Universal House of Justice urges the Friends and especially the assemblies to study the promoting entry by troops compilation to understand the coherence of its statements and use its counsels to lend a renewed impetus to the spirit of the faith and the establishment of the institutions of the cause of God. Number 7, in every aspect of teaching the message, the Friends should have confidence in the regenerative power of the Word of God and seek strength from the hosts of divine assistance and anticipate the bounties that will continually be showered upon them. Now, this one we have to examine a little closer. It says, if you want such a thing to happen, at the end of the day, you have to rely on God. You don't have to rely on anybody else except God. Start your action and then be sure in your heart and soul that the Almighty God that sees you will strengthen you, will help you, will give you assistance from His spiritual world and will get rid of obstacles and problems. Number 8, the Universal House of Justice says, to build a new world is no easy task. The road is stony and filled with obstacles, but the journey is infinitely rewarding. They are not minimizing it, you know. They're saying, oh, that's an easy task. No, of course, it's a difficult thing. It's full of difficulty, full of obstacles. But as they have said before, if you rely on God and you have the spirit of faith and you put all your energy into it, you are going to achieve it. Number 9, it is the ardent prayer our beloved House of Justice at the sacred threshold that the Friends throughout the world with their hearts filled with the love for Baha'u'llah will arise to teach the message to the thirsting multitude and will welcome into his cause all those whose spirits respond to the divine summons and who are moved throwing the lot with the builders of God's kingdom on earth. It's not an easy task. So, if you want to bring the multitude, troops, people in big numbers to the faith, it's not going to be easy. But if you rely on God and you do your share of work and be confident that God is the omnipotent and omnipresent present and is going to send you assistance, then you will achieve it. Then they have given a document from the research department of the Universal House of Justice to tell us how does this process of entry by troop really, and the growth takes place. What are the the conditions? What are the elements? How does this process work? Now, let's go through it item by item. First of all, you must realize this document consists of 4 parts. But I haven't written the 4th part because the 4th part is the summary of the first 3 parts. Now, the first part has got 4 subsections. The second part has got 5 subsections. The third part has got 6 subsections. I'm trying to help you to memorize it. So you remember, the first one is called Some Characteristics of Growth. You know that has got 4 parts. They say the growth of the Baha'i faith is organic growth, meaning like the vegetable or animal or the body of the human being that grows as an individual, itself grows. It's organic. It takes time, but it ultimately grows. You can't help it. It's a natural process. It has to happen. The second part says dynamic of crisis and victory, meaning that it has been proven that from 1844 until now that the faith of God grows. As soon as it grows to a certain limit, there is going to be crisis, there is going to be opposition, there is going to be obstacles, there is going to be upheavals. Because of these upheavals, because of these persecutions, because of these obstacles, that once we face it, then the period of crisis will end and the faith will grow 10 times more. Once it grows 10 times more, it gets more opposition, more persecution, more objection, more resistance. And when we face those obstacles and persecutions and opposition, we will overcome it, and then again the faith grows 10 times more. So we have these dynamics. Naturally, when there is the growth, there is going to be opposition, there is going to be crisis, but as a result of it and overcoming that, the faith will grow more and more. That has been always the story of the religion. Number 3 of part 1, subsection 3, impact of social decline. You see, as the faith of God grows, the righteousness is taught and exercised, a spiritual growth takes place, the people who are not following God, their situation is going to get bad, worse. They are going to first face calamities. The research department tells us that when people suddenly start suffering and face calamities, they will turn to God. So now your number will going to increase. That's the way it is. And then part 1, subsection 4 says, emergence from obscurity, meaning the more people get to know about the faith, the more people will come to it. At the moment, I'm talking from a person who's living in England. If you go to a new town and you talk to 10 people, maybe one of them would know what is Baha'i faith or heard about the Baha'i faith. Yes, we know that in the government circles, in the parliament, among those who are in authority, Baha'i faith is well known. Among the leaders of religion, Baha'i faith is well known. But the masses of people, not all of them know about Baha'i. They say, if they get to know about the Baha'i faith more, they follow the Baha'u'llah more. Section 2, factors contributing to growth. What is it that causes growth? What factors are there? Subsection 1, commitment to spiritual transformation. Meaning, if we develop our spiritual capacities and we become transformed, we fall in love with God and try to do His will, naturally the growth will be tremendous. Love and unity. The more as as people, Baha'is of the United Kingdom, we become more united and love each other, naturally people like to join a community that they all love each other and they are united with each other. Nobody likes to join a group of people who are fighting among each other and they don't like each other and they are not united. That's quite obvious. Subsection 3, universal participation. Yes, growth will happen when everybody does their duty. Naturally, you are not going to succeed if majority of the Baha'is of the United Kingdom, you are not actively helping you and teaching the faith. Balance between expansion and consolidation, meaning as soon as somebody comes to the faith, consolidate means make the situation such that they become part of you. They become part of the team. They become united with you. Subsection 5, Baha'i community as a model. You see, we have set the pattern of the life of the Baha'i individual, and then we have talked about our social principles, 13 social principles which we studied in the sessions that we have had together. And then the blueprint, the Baha'i administration, the world order of Baha'u'llah. This should be a model that everybody in the world, that they look at it and say, oh well, that's perfect, that's what I want as well. And then finally, section 3, it says, promoting entry by troops activities. What activities do we do that promotes entry by troops? Number 1, subsection 1, a strengthening of spiritual assemblies. Meaning, if these spiritual assemblies that in future they are going to be called the houses of justice, they are strong, motivated, full of active Baha'is, naturally the growth it will lead to growth. Subsection 2, efficient administration and prompt consolidation. Meaning that the way we do things is efficient. Now, if you want to know the real meaning of what is efficient, meaning with the least resources to achieve the goals. Let me give you an example. They said to me, go and hire a hall, we want to have a public meeting. Yes, I can go and get a hall and come and say, let's have a public meeting there. And then I said, well, it costs £500. Yes, I have achieved the objective, but I have used a lot of resources. But if I am efficient, I'm going to be able to, first of all, by introducing the faith properly, to get a hall free. But at least, or give it, just pay for it, one public meeting, 40, 50 pounds. Not 500 pounds. That's not efficient. That's misuse of the funds. Then you can apply it to other things. This prompt consolidation, meaning don't hang along, let the people who become Baha'is find their own way. No, you have to systematically train them, deepen them, teach them, and then give them responsibilities so that they can themselves feel the joy of working for Baha'u'llah. Subsection 3, a strategic, flexible teaching plan. That simply means if you have adopted a plan, which you should have a plan, whether for individuals or for communities. Individuals, they can make their own plan, but spiritual assemblies should have formal plan. But this, when they see that they are not achieving their objective through that plan, they should review it and be flexible. Say, well, this way didn't work, let's do another way. No, don't continue the same way if you see that you're not achieving growth. Don't be rigid, be flexible. Try another way. Ask for advice. Reaching people of capacity. You see, what is means by developing capacity? Somebody who's developed their mind, somebody who has achieved something in their life, who have disciplined their hearts, become loving and caring, so that they have influence among people. People listen to them. Naturally, if you get a lot of people who are well developed and they are influential and they can influence people, you are going to have growth. Relating the faith to contemporary social and humanitarian issues. If there is, you see, yesterday when I was talking about the crisis, solution to crisis, I gave you that an example of Abdul Baha. They said, how can we stop strikes? Abdul Baha says, give part of the shares of the companies to the laborers. Meaning, in the Baha'i faith, God has given us solution to problems. Now give it to the people. Naturally, when people realize it, you are going to have a lot of Baha'is, and the Baha'i community grows. Goal-directed behavior, meaning everybody in the community, when they are all listening to the Universal House of Justice, reading their messages, and they pray to God to give them strength and wisdom to follow the guidance of the Universal House of Justice, and they use their time and energy to implement the decisions of the Universal House of Justice, and they share the faith with their fellow men, with their families, with their countrymen. Naturally, the number of Baha'is will grow. But ultimately, The purpose is not to have many Baha'is, but to have a lot of Baha'is who are devoted to God. They have developed those virtues and they follow the guidance of God. Their heart is connected to Baha'u'llah, to the Almighty Creator. That's as much as I can personally say about this booklet, Promoting Entry by Troops. You studied the whole booklet yourself. It is on sale at your disposal. You read it and study it and see, are you really aware of these factors that contribute to growth, those activities that contribute to growth? Are we doing it or not? Where are we? And try to see, amend our ways so that we can help bring about troops. It's a process. Now, dear friends, you see, when Universal House of Justice let us have this booklet, the Promoting Entry by Troops, how to expand, how the expansion takes place, and they gave us 3 years to study there. Then the 3 years ended in Rezvan 153, which means April 1996. They gave us a message and they said, now we are going to have a 4-year plan. Meaning they made us ready for it first, and then they gave us the plan in 1996. So I've told you about the booklet, Entry by Troops. In the next session, I'm going to start talking and giving you the details of the 4-year plan of the Universal House of Justice. Now, dear friends, we went through the booklet that the Universal House of Justice gave us, called Promoting Entry by Troop, during the 3-year plan, before the Universal House of Justice gave us this 4-year plan in 1996, which is going to last until April the year 2000. It comes to an end. We are in the last few months of it. But we are studying this in order to understand how does God, the Almighty, gives His guidance to human beings. So what I'm trying to tell you is this, that when you listen to this 4-year plan that Universal House of Justice gave to the Baha'i international community in 1996, it was the voice of God talking to human beings. Universal House of Justice merely giving the guidance of God to mankind, through giving them systematic plan to strive for, to achieve the goals of this plan. That's what we have been trained for. That is the objective of life itself. That is the meaning of life, to do the will of God on earth and heaven. While we are here, we do the will of God on earth. When we go to the next dimension, the spiritual dimension, we will do the will of God in a spiritual dimension, in heaven. So, I want, you see, when they say that, when the shepherd calls the sheep know the voice of the shepherd. What I want you to try to understand, to listen to this message of Universal House of Justice. See, if it is capturing your heart, is it the voice of the shepherd or not? Is it the voice of God or not? That's what I want you to listen to this carefully for. Christine is going to read the message of Universal House of Justice to the whole Baha'i world in 1996, and then immediately after it, Albert is going to read the message of Universal House of Justice specifically to the Baha'is of Europe. I'm leaving you in the hands of Christine and Albert now.
To the Baha'is of the world, dearly loved friends, our hearts overflowing with gratitude to the Blessed Beauty, we acknowledge the abundant manifestations of His grace during the 3-year plan, which has run its course with the advent of this Rizwan festival. The animating spirit of the Holy Year, which lent impetus to the launching of the plan at Rizwan 1993, pervaded this period of concentrated endeavor, rendering our world community more consolidated, more resilient, more mature, and more confident than before. At the same time, the community's prestige attained new heights. While this plan has not ended on a note of dramatic numerical expansion, even though significant growth of membership occurred in various countries, it has nonetheless resulted in a qualitatively enriched community, one prepared to exploit the immediate prospects for the advancement of the faith. The magnificent progress of the projects on Mount Carmel is preeminent among the measurable achievements of this period. Indeed, despite numerous difficulties, the stage of accomplishment anticipated in our message announcing the 3-year plan is entirely evident. All phases of construction have been initiated. The structural framework of the Center for the Study of the Texts and the extension to the International Archives building has been raised up, and the work on these buildings has advanced towards initiation of the exterior and interior finishing work. The erection of the permanent seat of the International Teaching Center, the third structure currently being built on the Ark, is progressing rapidly. 7 terraces below the Shrine of the Bab are now completed, foreshowing the unfolding splendor from the foot to the ridge of God's holy mountain. A watchful public is awed at the tapestry of beauty spreading over the mountainside. The physical reality of the progress thus far, so marvelously realized, is a proof of an even more profound achievement, namely the unity of purpose effected through our global community in the pursuit of this gigantic collective enterprise. The intensity of the interest and support it has evoked has expressed itself in an unprecedented outpouring of contributions, reflecting a level of sacrifice that bespeaks the quality of faith and generosity of heart of Baha'u'llah's lovers throughout the planet. That contributions towards the Mount Carmel projects have met the 3-year goal of $74 million marks yet another measurable and exceptional achievement, inspiring confidence that the necessary financial support for these projects will continue until their completion by the end of the century. The signs of progress during the past 3 years were evident in a wide and varied field. The remarkable efforts to expand and consolidate the community, the increased ventures in social and economic development, and the unprecedented thrust of the external affairs work combined to portray a community endowed with new capacities. In the arena of teaching, there was a general increase of activity as indicated by the formation of 12 new national spiritual assemblies during the course of the plan and by the surge of pioneering and travel teaching. Believers in many countries were galvanized by the fresh approach suggested in the pioneer call released during the plan. The number of pioneers from and to various countries was high, and there was a veritable flood of traveling teachers operating both at home and abroad. Systematic approaches to collective teaching activities and well-focused long-term teaching projects were fruitful and were more evident than ever before in a number of countries. The energy and creativity attendant to the various developments in expansion and consolidation owed much to the spirit of enterprise shown by the International Teaching Centre. Its constant direction and encouragement of the Continental Board of Councillors, its recommendation of new methods for the deployment of pioneers, as endorsed by the Universal House of Justice, in the pioneer call released in the early months of the plan, and its regular assistance to the Continental Pioneer Committees placed in its charge, its unflagging attention to the educational needs of the community as expressed in its interactions with councillors concerning the inclusion in teaching projects of deepening programs for new believers, the devising of courses and workshops for training in different capacities, the training of children's teachers and the multiplication of children's classes, its stimulation of efforts to establish training institutes in different parts of the world, all have produced resounding results. Major credit must also go to the Teaching Centre for the influence it exerted through the councillors on the adoption of core literature programs in an increasing number of countries. Through such programs, a few titles essential to the propagation of the faith and the deepening of the believers were selected, printed in large quantities and made available at reduced prices. The outstanding progress in the evolution of this vital institution operating at the World Centre was palpable in its preparation and conduct of the Councillors' Conference last December, which set the course for the work of these high-ranking officers of the faith during the immediate years ahead. A relevant development was the notable rise in the assumption of responsibility by indigenous believers for the teaching and consolidation work in their own countries. In greatly troubled areas such as Angola, Cambodia, Liberia, Sierra Leone, the Friends claimed important victories, whether in pursuing teaching activities which resulted in numerically significant enrollments, or in establishing and reactivating Baha'i assemblies, or in initiating and sustaining development projects. In places with recently formed national spiritual assemblies, such as the countries of the former Eastern Bloc, the Friends have shown an admirable capacity for administering the affairs of the cause. A highlight of this period was the upsurge of vigor, courage, and creativity in Baha'i island communities throughout the world. The categories of activity were wide-ranging, involving the raising up of local teachers, the training and dispatch of scores of traveling teachers to neighboring islands, the inauguration of primary schools, the multiple occasions for proclamation of the faith, the sponsorship of events attended by high-ranking officials and influential persons. The fact that in recent years a number of government leaders of island nations have visited the Baha'i World Centre is indicative of the vitality of the activities of the believers in these small lands scattered throughout the 7 seas. Taken together, all the foregoing examples of the attitudes and efforts of the Friends in different settings demonstrate a heightened commitment to the teaching work and a growing maturity and resilience reflective of the depth of faith motivating Baha'is from diverse populations. Consonant with these observations were the outstanding contributions of the youth to expansion and consolidation. Their activities took on added dimensions during the 3-year period. Actuated by youth conferences and other gatherings, attentive to their interests, youth throughout the world invested immense amounts of time, energy, and zeal in the teaching work as traveling teachers within and outside their countries, and as teams in collective teaching projects, and in so doing, they stimulated hundreds of new enrollments and the formation of many local spiritual assemblies, involvement of youth in music and the arts as a means of proclaiming and teaching the cause distinguished their exertions in many places. The spread of dance and drama workshops was particularly effective. Participation of youth in external affairs opened new possibilities for the faith in this field. Commitment to a year of service was more widely demonstrated. At the same time, there was a notable increase in the number of youth acquiring formal training and achieving academic, professional, and vocational excellence. Altogether, an indication that the youth are doing more in direct service to the faith, while at the same time contributing to the general development of society. Signs of the consolidation of the community were also discernible in the greater involvement of the Friends in social and economic development, particularly in the field of education. In one outstanding instance, a government asked the Baha'is to take responsibility for the management of 7 public schools, and they did so with the backing of the Office of Social and Economic Development at the World Centre. Worthy of note is that in Africa, Baha'i communities in exile, because of political unrest in their home country, continued to develop farming and other projects that went far towards ensuring self-sufficiency. Efforts at improving the status of women gathered momentum in a number of countries where, in addition to Baha'i participation in projects sponsored by other organizations, the Baha'i institutions set up committees and offices to attend to the interests of women. The Baha'i International Communities Office for the Advancement of Women emerged as a symbol of this upswing. In a number of countries too, there was significant Baha'i participation in government-sponsored programs to improve health. In other instances, Baha'i groups initiated such programs and carried them out. The work in social and economic development was also distinguished by the firm establishment and consolidation of a number of major projects and organizations. 3 pilot literacy projects were begun as a first step in a literacy campaign which the Office of Social and Economic Development intends to extend throughout the world. The Baha'i Initiation and involvement in development projects also resulted in proclamation of the faith as they attracted the participation of the public and the interest of mass media. A thrust in the external affairs work exceeding all previous records for a similar period boosted the proclamation of the cause. A prodigy of effort in all parts of the world redounded to a much greater visibility of the faith than obtained before, and to a subsequent rise in the prestige of the Baha'i international community. The broad lines of progress were evident in the ease with which Baha'i communities, large and small, sponsored or participated in public events, in the emergence of the Baha'is as a force in society recognized by governmental and non-governmental organizations, and many prominent persons in the ready accessibility of the media. Indeed, the wide coverage accorded Baha'i events and interests by the print and electronic communications media was beyond calculation. In the sweep of activities throughout the world, certain specific developments stood out. The frequency with which high public officials would invite Baha'is to participate in or assist with events or projects, the successful initiatives of Baha'is in influencing government action, the establishment of Baha'i academic programs and courses in colleges and universities, and the adoption of curricular material for public schools, the use of the arts by Baha'i institutions, groups and individuals in proclamation events. During 1995, two major United Nations events exemplified the gathering momentum of an emerging unity of thought in world undertakings, and these engaged the active attention and participation of the Baha'i community. First, the World Summit for Social Development in Copenhagen during March involved 250 friends from more than 40 countries who mounted an impressive effort to acquaint the summit participants and the related NGO forum with the teachings. It was on this occasion that the statement, "The Prosperity of Humankind," produced by the Baha'i International Community's Office of Public Information, was first distributed and discussed. Follow-up activities all over the world included the holding of conferences and seminars, as well as the distribution of the statement. Second, the Fourth World Conference on Women and the concomitant NGO forum held in Beijing during September drew the attendance of more than 500 Baha'is from around the world, in addition to the official delegation of the Baha'i international community. In that same year, a third event, the observance of the 50th anniversary of the United Nations, prompted the Baha'i International Community's United Nations Office to produce and distribute a statement entitled "Turning Point for All Nations," containing proposals for the development of that world organization. Also of particular note among the external affairs activities were two occasions involving the prominent participation of Amatul Baha Ruhiye Khanum. Last spring she headed the delegation of the 4 official Baha'i representatives to the summit on the alliance between religions and conservation, patronized by His Royal Highness Prince Philip and held at Windsor Castle. During October, Ruhiye Khanum was the keynote speaker at the 4th International Dialogue on the Transition to Global Society, held under the auspices of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, and organized by the Baha'i Chair for World Peace and the Department of History at the University of Maryland. Nor can we neglect to mention certain other significant marks of the period under review. An edition of the Kitab-i-Aqdas in the original Arabic was published with, for the first time, notes in Persian, supplementing the text as in the English edition. The law of Huququllah became more deeply rooted in the hearts of the believers throughout the world. And during the final year of the plan, the trustee of Huququllah, Hand of the Cause of God, Ali Muhammad Vaga, took up residence in the Holy Land. This significant step also means that all three hands of the cause of God, Amatul Baha Ruhiya Khanum, Mr. Ali Akbar Furutan, and Dr. Vaga, are now residing at the World Center, bringing inspiration to pilgrims and visitors and to the friends serving at the World Center. It is against such a background of heartening developments that we embark at this Rizwan upon a 4-year plan that will carry us to Rizwan 2000. We earnestly and lovingly call upon our brothers and sisters of every land to join us in a mobilization of effort that will ensure to generations of the fast approaching 21st century an abundant and lasting legacy. The 4-year plan aims at one major accomplishment: a significant advance in the process of entry by troops. As we have stated earlier, such an advance is to be achieved through marked progress in the activity and development of the individual believer, of the institutions, and of the local community. The phrase "advance in the process of entry by troops" accommodates the concept that current circumstances demand and existing opportunities allow for a sustained growth of the Baha'i world community on a large scale, that this upsurge is necessary in the face of world conditions, that the three constituent participants in the upbuilding of the order of Baha'u'llah, the individual, the institutions, and the community, can foster such growth first by spiritually and mentally accepting the possibility of it, and then by working towards embracing masses of new believers, setting in motion the means for effecting their spiritual and administrative training and development, thereby multiplying the number of knowledgeable, active teachers and administrators whose involvement in the work of the cause will ensure a constant influx of new adherents, an uninterrupted evolution of Baha'i assemblies, and a steady consolidation of the community. Moreover, to advance the process implies that that process is already in progress, and that local and national communities are at different stages of it. All communities are now tasked to take steps and sustain efforts to achieve a level of expansion and consolidation commensurate with their possibilities. The individual and the institutions, while operating in distinctive spheres, are summoned to arise to meet the requirements of this crucial time in the life of our community and in the fortunes of all humankind. The role of the individual is of unique importance in the work of the cause. It is the individual who manifests the vitality of faith upon which the success of the teaching work and the development of the community depend. Baha'u'llah's command to each believer to teach his faith confers an inescapable responsibility which cannot be transferred to or assumed by any institution of the cause. The individual alone can exercise those capacities which include the ability to take initiative, to seize opportunities, to form friendships, to interact personally with others, to build relationships, to win the cooperation of others in common service to the faith and society, and to convert into action the decisions made by consultative bodies. It is the individual's duty to, quote, consider every avenue of approach which he might utilize in his personal attempts to capture the attention, maintain the interest, and deepen the faith of those whom he seeks to bring into the fold of the faith, unquote. To optimize the use of these capacities, the individual draws upon his love for Baha'u'llah, the power of the covenant, the dynamics of prayer, the inspiration and education derived from regular reading and study of the holy texts, and the transformative forces that operate upon his soul as he strives to behave in accordance with the divine laws and principles. In addition to these, the individual, having been given the duty to teach the cause, is endowed with the capacity to attract particular blessings promised by Baha'u'llah. Whoso openeth his lips in this day, the blessed beauty asserts, and maketh mention of the name of his Lord, the hosts of divine inspiration shall descend upon him from the heaven of my name, the all-knowing, the all-wise. On him shall also descend the concourse on high, each bearing aloft a chalice of pure light. Shoghi Effendi underscored the absolute necessity of individual initiative and action. He explained that without the support of the individual, at once wholehearted, continuous, and generous, every measure and plan of his National Spiritual Assembly is foredoomed to failure. The purpose of the Master's divine plan is impeded. Furthermore, the sustaining strength of Baha'u'llah himself will be withheld from every and each individual who fails in the long run to arise and play his part. Hence, at the very crux of any progress to be made is the individual believer who possesses the power of execution, which only he can release through his own initiative and sustained action. Regarding the sense of inadequacy that sometimes hampers individual initiative, a letter written on his behalf conveys the Guardian's advice. Chief among these, you mention the lack of courage and of initiative on the part of the believers, and a feeling of inferiority which prevents them from addressing the public. It is precisely these weaknesses that he wishes the friends to overcome, for these do not only paralyze their efforts, but actually serve to quench the flame of faith in their hearts. Not until all the friends come to realize that every one of them is able in his own measure to deliver the message, can they ever hope to reach the goal that has been set before them by a loving and wise master. Everyone is a potential teacher. He has only to use what God has given him and thus prove that he is faithful to his trust. As for the institutions, entry by troops will act upon them as much as they will act upon it. The evolution of local and national Baha'i assemblies at this time calls for a new state of mind on the part of their members as well as on the part of those who elect them. For the Baha'i community is engaged in an immense historical process that is entering a critical stage. Baha'u'llah has given to the world institutions to operate in an order designed to canalize the forces of a new civilization. Progress towards that glorious realization requires a great and continuous expansion of the Baha'i community, so that adequate scope is provided for the maturation of these institutions. This is a matter of immediate importance to Baha'u'llah's avowed supporters in all lands. For such an expansion to be stimulated and accommodated, the spiritual assemblies must rise to a new stage in the exercise of their responsibilities as channels of divine guidance, planners of the teaching work, developers of human resources, builders of communities, and loving shepherds of the multitudes. They can realize these prospects through increasing the ability of their members to take counsel together in accordance with the principles of the faith and to consult with the friends under their jurisdiction, through fostering the spirit of service, through spontaneously collaborating with the continental councillors and their auxiliaries, and through cultivating their external relations. Particularly must the progress in the evolution of the institutions be manifest in the multiplication of localities, in which the functioning of the spiritual assembly enhances the individual believer's capacity to serve the cause and fosters unified action. In sum, the maturity of the spiritual assembly must be measured not only by the regularity of its meetings and the efficiency of its functioning, but also by the continuity of the growth of Baha'i membership. The effectiveness of the interaction between the assembly and the members of the community, the quality of the spiritual and social life of the community, and the overall sense of vitality of a community in the process of dynamic, ever-advancing development. The community, as distinguished from the individual and the institutions, assumes its own character and identity as it grows in size. This is a necessary development to which much attention is required, both with respect to places where large-scale enrollment has occurred and in anticipation of more numerous instances of entry by troops. A community is, of course, more than the sum of its membership. It is a comprehensive unit of civilization, composed of individuals, families, and institutions that are originators and encouragers of systems, agencies, and organizations working together with a common purpose for the welfare of people, both within and beyond its own borders. It is a composition of diverse, interacting participants that are achieving unity in an unremitting quest for spiritual and social progress. Since Baha'is everywhere are at the very beginning of the process of community building, enormous effort must be devoted to the tasks at hand. As we have said in an earlier message, the flourishing of the community, especially at the local level, demands a significant enhancement in patterns of behavior. Those patterns by which the collective expression of the virtues of the individual members and the functioning of the spiritual assembly are manifest in the unity and fellowship of the community and the dynamism of its activity and growth. This calls for the integration of the component elements. Adults, youth and children, in spiritual, social, educational and administrative activities and their engagement in local plans of teaching and development. It implies a collective will and sense of purpose to perpetuate the spiritual assembly through annual elections. It involves the practice of collective worship of God. Hence, it is essential to the spiritual life of the community that the Friends hold regular devotional meetings in local Baha'i centers, where available, or elsewhere, including the homes of believers. To effect the possibilities of expansion and consolidation implied by entry by troops, a determined, worldwide effort to develop human resources must be made. The endeavor of individuals to conduct study classes in their homes, the sponsorship by the institutions of occasional courses of instruction, and the informal activities of the community, though important, are not adequate for the education and training of a rapidly expanding community. It is therefore of paramount importance that systematic attention be given to devising methods for educating large numbers of believers in the fundamental verities of the faith and for training and assisting them to serve the cause as their God-given talents allow. There should be no delay in establishing permanent institutes designed to provide well-organized, formally conducted programs of training on a regular schedule. Access of the institute to physical facilities will, of course, be necessary, but it may not require a building of its own. This matter calls for an intensification of the collaboration between the continental councillors and national spiritual assemblies. For the success of these training institutes will depend in very large measure on the active involvement of the continental councillors and the auxiliary board members in their operation. Particularly will it be necessary for auxiliary board members to have a close working relationship with institutes and, of course, with the local spiritual assemblies whose communities will benefit from institute programs. Since institutes are to be regarded as centers of learning, and since their character harmonizes with and provides scope for the exercise of the educational responsibilities of the auxiliary board members, the intimate involvement in institute operations should now become a part of the evolving functions of these officers of the faith. Drawing on the talents and abilities of increasing numbers of believers will also be crucial to the development and execution of institute programs. As the term institute has assumed various uses in the Baha'i community, a word of clarification is needed. The next 4 years will represent an extraordinary period in the history of our faith, a turning point of epochal magnitude. What the Friends throughout the world are now being asked to do is to commit themselves, their material resources, their abilities and their time to the development of a network of training institutes on a scale never before attempted. these centers of Baha'i learning will have as their goal one very practical outcome, namely the raising up of large numbers of believers who are trained to foster and facilitate the process of entry by troops with efficiency and love. Center your energies in the propagation of the faith of God. Baha'u'llah thus instructs his servants, adding, "Whoso is worthy of so high a calling, let him arise and promote it. Whoso is unable, it is his duty to appoint him who will in his stead proclaim this revelation." Just as one deputizes another to teach in one's stead by covering the expenses of a pioneer or traveling teacher, one can deputize a teacher serving an institute who is, of course, a teacher of teachers. To do so, one may make contributions to the Continental Baha'i Fund, as well as to the local, national, and international funds earmarked for this purpose. In all their efforts to achieve the aim of the 4-year plan, the Friends are also asked to give greater attention to the use of the arts, not only for proclamation, but also for the work in expansion and consolidation. The graphic and performing arts and literature have played and can play a major role in extending the influence of the cause. At the level of folk art, this possibility can be pursued in every part of the world, whether it be in villages, towns, or cities. Shoghi Effendi held high hopes for the arts as a means for attracting attention to the teachings. A letter written on his behalf to an individual thus conveys the Guardian's view. "The day will come when the cause will spread like wildfire, when its spirit and teachings will be presented on the stage or in art and literature as a whole. Art can better awaken such noble sentiments than cold rationalizing, especially among the mass of the people." While the Friends and institutions everywhere bend their energies to implementing the requirements of the plan, work on the great projects on Mount Carmel will continue towards their anticipated completion at the end of the century. By the end of the plan at Rizwan 2000, the buildings for the Center for the Study of the Texts and the extension of the Archives building will become operational. The International Teaching Center building will have advanced to the final finishing stage. The section of the public road which now interrupts the path of the terraces above the Shrine of the Bab will have been lowered, and a broad connecting bridge with its own gardens will have been built. 5 of the upper terraces will also have been completed. The remaining 4 upper terraces and the 2 at the foot of the mountain will be in an advanced stage of development. Other particular efforts will be pursued at the World Centre as well. Attention will be given to such matters as the universal application of additional laws of the Kitab-i-Aqdas, the preparation of a new volume in English of selected writings of Baha'u'llah, the further development of the functions of the International Teaching Center, and the devising of measures for increasing the number of pilgrims and visitors to the World Centre. The Baha'i world community will expand its endeavors in both social and economic development and external affairs, and thus continue to collaborate directly with the forces leading towards the establishment of order in the world. By improving its coordinating capacity, the Office of Social and Economic Development will assist in building, as resources and opportunity permit, on the progress already made with hundreds of development projects around the world. In the arena of external affairs, efforts will be aimed at influencing the processes towards world peace, particularly through the community's involvement in the promotion of human rights, the status of women, global prosperity and moral development. In the pursuit of these themes, the Baha'i International Community's United Nations Office will seek ways to reinforce the ties between the Baha'is and the United Nations. Similarly, the Office of Public Information will assist the Baha'i institutions to utilize these themes towards greater proclamation of the faith, defense of the rights of the Baha'is in Iran, and increased efforts to emancipate the faith in that country and other countries where it is proscribed will constitute a vital part of our dealings with governments and non-governmental organizations. In all such respects, the Baha'i Friends and institutions are urged to be alert to the importance of activities in external affairs and to give renewed attention to them. The formation this Rizwan of two national spiritual assemblies lends a propitious beginning to the 4-year plan. We are delighted to announce that our two representatives to the inaugural national conventions are the Hand of the Cause of God, Amatul Baha Ruhiya Khanum, Moldova, and Mr. Fred Schlechter, Councillor Member of the International Teaching Centre, Sao Tome and Principe. Regrettably, due to circumstances entirely beyond their control, the national spiritual assemblies of Burundi and Rwanda cannot be re-elected this year. The number of these institutions worldwide will consequently remain at 174. Rizwan 2000, the point at which the 4-year plan is to be concluded, will come many months before the end of the 20th century. At that juncture in time, the Baha'i world will look back in appreciation at the extraordinary developments and dazzling achievements that will have distinguished the annals of the cause of Baha'u'llah during that eventful period, a period which Abdul-Baha called the Century of Light. Not the least of the accomplishments then to be recognized will be the completion of the current projects on Mount Carmel, which, together with the other edifices on that holy mountain, will stand as a monument to the progress which the administrative order will have attained by that time in the formative age. The highlight of such appreciations will, God willing, be the holding at the World Centre of a major event to mark the completion of the buildings on the Ark and the opening of the terraces of the Shrine of the Bab to the public. Beloved friends, we enter this plan amid the turbulence of a period of accelerating transition. The twin processes prompted by the impact of Baha'u'llah's revelation are fast at work, gathering a momentum that will, in the words of Shoghi Effendi, bring to a climax the forces that are transforming the face of our planet. One is an integrating process. The other is disruptive. Out of the universal fermentation created by these processes, peace will emerge in stages through which the unifying effects of a growing consciousness of world citizenship will become manifest. Towards that end, recent world developments have paradoxically been both shocking and reassuring. On one hand, the disarray of human affairs produces a daily diet of horrors that benumb the senses. On the other, world leaders are often taking collective actions that, to a Baha'i observer, signify a tendency towards a common approach by nations to solving world problems. Consider, for instance, the unusual frequency of the global occasions on which these leaders have gathered since the Holy Year 4 years ago, such as the one in observance of the 50th anniversary of the United Nations, at which the attending heads of state and heads of government asserted their commitment to world peace. Noteworthy, too, are the promptitude and spontaneity with which these government leaders have been acting together in responding to a variety of crises in different parts of the world. Such trends coincide with the increasing cries from enlightened circles for attention to be given to the feasibility of achieving some form of global governance. Might we not see in these swiftly developing occurrences the workings of the hand of Providence? Indeed, the very harbinger of the monumental occasion forecast in our writings? Even though the establishment of the lesser peace is not dependent on any Baha'i plan or action, and although it will not represent the ultimate goal humanity is destined to reach in the Golden Age, our community has a responsibility to lend spiritual impetus to the processes towards that peace. The need at this exact time is to so intensify our efforts in building the Baha'i system that we will attract the confirmations of Baha'u'llah and thus invoke a spiritual atmosphere that will accrue to the quickening of these processes. Two main challenges face us. One is to mount a campaign of teaching in which the broad membership of our community is enthusiastically, systematically, and personally engaged, and in which the activation of an extensive teaching program, training program, will ensure the development of a mass of human resources. The other is to complete the construction projects on Mount Carmel, towards which every sacrifice must be made to provide a liberal outpouring of material means. These twin foci, if resolutely pursued, will foster conditions towards the release of pent-up forces that will forge a change in the direction of human affairs throughout the planet. However short the path to peace, it will be tortuous. However promising the anticipated event that will set its course, it must mature through a long period of evolution, with its attendant tests, setbacks, and conflicts, towards the moment when it will have emerged under the direct influences of God's faith as the most great peace. In the meantime, people everywhere will often face despair and bewilderment before arriving at an appreciation of the transition in progress. We who have been enlightened by the new revelation have the sacred word to assure us, a divine plan to guide us, a history of valor to encourage us. Let us therefore take heart not only from the word we treasure, but also from the deeds of heroism and sacrifice, which even today shine resplendent in the land in which our cause was born. For some 17 years, our persecuted brethren in Iran have demonstrated a constancy of faith and courage that has produced a vast proclamation of the faith, forcing it out of obscurity. Here then is living evidence in our own time of the potencies of crisis and victory. Please God, it may not be too long before our Iranian brethren are relieved of the yoke they bear and are ushered into the glories and wonders of a victory that only the blessed beauty can bestow. Their experience is a signal and an example to us all, wherever we may live, for eventually opposition as the Master has told us, will rear its head on all the continents. Though it may be of a different character from place to place, it will no doubt be intensive. But, thanks to the strengthening grace of Baha'u'llah and the demonstration of steadfastness by these noble friends, we shall know how to meet the shafts of the enemy without fear. Indeed, the Lord of hosts has promised to deliver to his people an overwhelming and decisive triumph. As humanity is tossed and tormented by the ravages inflicted upon it by a civilization gone out of control, let us keep our heads and hearts focused on the divine tasks set before us. For amid this turmoil, opportunities will abound that must be exploited. For the purpose of spreading far and wide the knowledge of the redemptive power of the faith of Baha'u'llah, and for enlisting fresh recruits in the ever-swelling army of his followers. This plan, to which we are now committed, is set at one of the most critical times in the life of the planet. It is meant to prepare our community to cope with the accelerating changes that are occurring in the world about us, and to place the community in a position both to withstand the weight of the accompanying tests and challenges, and to make more visible a pattern of functioning to which the world can turn for aid and example in the wake of a tumultuous transition. Thus, this plan acquires a special place in the scheme of Baha'i and world history. Those of us who are alive to the vision of the faith are particularly privileged to be consciously engaged in efforts intended to stimulate and eventually enhance such processes. May you all arise to seize the tasks of this crucial moment. May each inscribe his or her own mark on a brief span of time so charged with potentialities and hope for all humanity. Lest you become distracted or preoccupied with the drastic happenings of this age of transition, bear ever in mind the advice of our infallible guide, Shoghi Effendi. Not ours, puny mortals that we are, to attempt at so critical a stage in the long and checkered history of mankind, to arrive at a precise and satisfactory understanding of the steps which must successively lead a bleeding humanity, wretchedly oblivious of its God, and careless of Baha'u'llah, from its Calvary to its ultimate resurrection. Ours rather the duty, however confused the scene, however dismal the present outlook, however circumscribed the resources we dispose of, to labor serenely, confidently, and unremittingly to lend our share of assistance, in whichever way circumstances may enable us, to the operation of the forces which, as marshalled and directed by Baha'u'llah, are leading humanity out of the valley of misery and shame to the loftiest summits of power and glory. Signed, the Universal House of Justice.
Now this is a letter from the Universal House of Justice to the followers of Baha'u'llah in Europe. Dear loved friends, 43 years ago, when the European Baha'is gathered at the conference in Stockholm, called by the beloved Guardian for the launch of the mighty 10-year crusade in your continent, you had but 3 national spiritual assemblies. Those of the British Isles, of Germany and Austria, and Italy and Switzerland, together with the slowly developed local communities in other countries of Western Europe. In the East, cut off by political barriers, were tiny remnants of communities which had been raised up in earlier years, and in neighbouring Turkey was a small, struggling national community. As the European believers of that time contemplated the awe-inspiring task before them, they heard the words of the Guardian, illuminating the historical significance of the continent in which they were to build the institutions of Baha'u'llah's embryonic world order. A continent occupying such a central and strategic position on the entire planet, so rich and eventful in its history, so diversified in its culture, from whose soil sprang both the Hellenic and Roman civilizations, the mainspring of a civilization to some of those features Baha'u'llah himself paid tribute, on whose shores Christendom first established its home, among whose eastern marches the mighty forces of the Cross and the Crescent so frequently clashed, on whose southwestern extremities a fast evolving Islamic culture yielded its fairest fruits, in whose hearts the light of the Reformation shone so brightly, shedding its rays as far as the outlying regions of the globe. This, your continent, whose soil is blessed by the footsteps of Baha'u'llah himself, which was twice visited by Abdul-Baha in his epoch-making journeys following his release from imprisonment, whose travellers and scholars early responded to the dawning light of the Baha'i revelation, two of those whose governments extended the hand of succour during the heroic age of the faith, and whose nations in recent years have intervened so effectively in the defense of the persecuted Baha'is in Iran, has amply demonstrated the capacity of its people to rally to the banner of the cause of God, once their hearts are touched and their minds are awakened to the message. In the course of these 43 years, the European Baha'i communities have shown great vitality. The number of spiritual assemblies has risen to 34, covering the entire continent and embracing, in the case of Russia, vast territories as far as the Pacific Ocean. Great victories have been won for the faith by European pioneers in Africa, the Pacific, the Caribbean, and Greenland. Your institutions have distinguished themselves in external affairs. Your communities include outstanding scholars of the faith, musicians, artists, scientists, and those concerned with the application of Baha'i teachings to economics and business. You have exerted special efforts for the advancement of women and the strengthening of family life. The European Baha'i Youth Council provides a focal point and a source of stimulation to the youth in all parts of Europe, complemented by the network of national and local youth committees, closely linked to and supported by their national and local spiritual assemblies. Now is the time to build on those achievements, clearly focusing all efforts on the central purpose of taking the message of Baha'u'llah to the spiritual famished population. The first task of your national spiritual assemblies, immediately after Rizwan, will be to formulate in consultation with the councillors, the details of the 4-year plan, country by country. The participation of the local spiritual assemblies and individual believers in evolving their own local plans and in following the lines of action to be clearly laid down will be essential for the successful achievement of the high aims of this stage of the implementation of the divine plan of Abdu'l-Baha. Europe is a continent of great variety, and each of your national assemblies will be studying with care and the process and achievements required for the advancement of the cause of God in its area during the coming 4 years. Each must consider the current conditions of the community, the territory within which it is working, and the areas of potential collaboration with other Baha'i communities. Special attention will need to be paid to the attainment of official recognition in those countries where the institutions of the faith has not yet legally incorporated, and to raising up national spiritual assemblies in certain of those independent countries and major islands, such as the Faroes, which have not yet attained them. There are, however, certain elements of an even wider vision which must be considered as they apply to specific countries, groups of countries, and the entire continent. There are areas which cry out for pioneers and travelling teachers. The mind turns, for example, to the work amongst the Sami and other peoples of the Arctic and subarctic areas far north as Spitsbergen. We contemplate the significance of the teaching of the faith in the islands of the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, and the North Sea. The continent-wide importance of Romani people who have begun to show such receptivity to the call of Baha'u'llah, the opportunity for the European Baha'is to demonstrate the salutary nature of the teachings in relation to the minorities of every kind, the specific task described by the beloved guardian as the destiny of certain communities and their responsibilities in far-flung lands where their languages are spoken. The implications of the advancement of the faith in Italy, where to be found the heart and stronghold of the leading and most ancient and powerful church of Christendom. The need to rapidly increase the number of Baha'i centers in the vast areas of the Ukraine and the European Russia. And beyond this, the special responsibilities and opportunities of the Baha'i communities of the Russian Federation, the larger part of whose area lies in Asia, and must continue to benefit from the collaboration with neighborhood communities of Central, Southern, and Eastern Asia, as well as Alaska, Canada, and the United States. All these are but some examples of the challenge which you face in the years ahead. The central aim of the 4-year plan, a significant advance in the process of entry by troops, is especially significant for Europe. You should have no misgivings. It is a process that can advance in all parts of Europe, in the West as well as in the East. All should recognize that entry by troops is an inevitable stage in the development of the cause. The nature of the process is clarified in the compilation on the subject, whence it becomes apparent that the desired outcome, a sustained entry by troops, cannot be achieved by a mere series of spasmodic, uncoordinated exertions, no matter how enthusiastic. Confidence, unity of vision, systematic, realistic, but audacious planning acceptance of the fact that the mistakes will be made and willingness to learn from those mistakes, and above all, reliance on the guidance and sustaining confirmation of Baha'u'llah will advance this process. The establishment of training institutes in various locations is emphasized in the 4-year plan because current methods, valuable as they are thought to be, are not adequate by themselves to meet the challenge of this new stage in the growth of the cause. The character and structure of the training institutes must be adapted to the conditions of each country and region. Clearly, their form in Europe will not be identical with that the training institutes in rural areas of India. Their essential functions, however, will be the same. They will foster a firm acceptance of Baha'i identity in those who take part, the capacity to look upon the world and its conditions from the point of view of the teachings, rather than from the standpoint of one's nationality or non-Baha'i background. They will help to develop in each participant a deep love for Baha'u'llah, a good understanding of his essential teachings, and an awareness of the importance of developing the spiritual life of each individual through prayer, meditation, and immersion in the sacred writings. They will also cover such practical matters as how to teach the faith, for there are too many who, for lack of confidence in their ability to do so, are hesitant to convey the message. The transformation that such deepenings in the faith produces will surely inflame the hearts of the individual friends with the longing to share this message with those around them. And this is the seed of all success in teaching. Those who have attended training institutes will be able to help the other Baha'is, new and old, to increase their potential for teaching, and so greatly increase the human resources of the cause, in which every believer is a teacher. The teaching of the faith by the friends in Europe must increase in range. It must be varied, spontaneous, on individuals on the one hand, and focused, unity and mutually supportive on the other. It must be both inspiring and practical, and must be, above all, be informed. Be informed with a serene faith in the power of Baha'u'llah. You should widen the field of your teaching work to include the country people and the masses labouring in the cities, people of little education as well as intellectuals in the university towns. You should consciously approach every stratum of society, adapting your methods, literature and audiovisual materials to each audience. Both the heart and the mind need to be fed. Both spiritual force and intellectual clarity must be recognized as vital elements of the teaching work. You have excelled in the use of the arts for a proclamation, expansion and consolidation of the faith. This is the key to opening many other doors and should be encouraged and developed. Your unity, enthusiasm, confidence and perseverance, strengthened and guided by the power of prayer, cannot fail to act as a channel for divine confirmations, which will be a magnet to the seeking souls. For our part, we shall pray ardently at the sacred threshold for you, who have won such historic victories in your homelands and throughout the world. We'll enter during the 4-year plan into a stage of even greater achievement, presaging the as yet unimaginable glories destined to unfold during the 21st century. Signed, the Universal House of Justice.
Now, dear friends, Christine and Albert read for you the message of Universal House of Justice for the 4-year plan in 1996. And then a few weeks after that, Universal House of Justice sent a message to all the national assemblies telling them that they have allocated $300,000 for the expense of establishing these teaching training institutes for the countries that they need funds. And while monitoring the progress of the 4-year plan, they reached April 1997, and the Universal House of Justice sent this follow-up message that Christine is going to read you. And then in 1998, again in April, another follow-up message which Albert is going to read for you. And then in 1999, again a follow-up message that Christine is going to read you, guiding slowly and carefully the community in the world, Baha'i community, international community, to achieve those goals of the Universal House of Justice, which this plan aims for and intends to accomplish by April 2000.
To the Baha'is of the world, dearly loved friends, we acclaim with grateful hearts the eager response on all continents to the 4-year plan launched last Rizwan. Consultations of the Continental Councillors and National Spiritual Assemblies started an extensive planning process, also involving auxiliary board members and local spiritual assemblies. Through such a process, the national and regional character of the derivative plans took shape. But this world-encompassing exercise did more than yield distinctive schemes for the different countries. It also boosted the collaborative relationship of the two arms of the administrative order, a most welcome portent of the victories yet to come. A sign of the immediate impact of the plan was the speed with which steps were taken to establish nearly 200 training institutes during the last 12 months. Many of these have gone far beyond the point of designing their organization. They are actually in operation and have offered their first courses. Moreover, in the movement of home front and international pioneers and traveling teachers, in the increased attention given by individuals to deputizing teachers, in the preparations made to ensure the formation of local spiritual assemblies only on the first day of Rizwan, in the increasing endeavors to hold regular devotional meetings, in the widening efforts to make use of the arts in the teaching work and community activities. In all these respects could be discerned the Friends' keen awareness of the importance of concentrating on the requirements of the major aim of the plan, which is to effect a significant advance in the process of entry by troops. Nor can we neglect to recognize other developments during the past year, which confirmed the high merit of the manifold efforts being exerted by our world community and the results being achieved. Among these, to mention a few, were the acquisition of the apartment at 4 Avenue de Camion in Paris, where the beloved master, Abdul-Baha, resided during his historic visit to the city. the special session on the 14th of August of the Federal Chamber of Deputies in Brazil to mark the 75th anniversary of the introduction of the Baha'i faith into that country. A unique official occasion at which Amatul Baha Ruhiye Khanum was present as the honoured guest. The launching last July of the Baha'i International Community's site on the World Wide Web, entitled The Baha'i World, which to date has received from more than 90 countries and territories over 50,000 visits, averaging some 200 per day. Hardly outpaced by such accomplishments, the construction projects on Mount Carmel maintained a dazzling momentum, highlighted by the completion of the marble colonnade of the Center for the Study of the Texts, by the rise of the International Teaching Center building towards its 7th level, and by the ongoing emergence of the far-stretching features of the terraces of the Shrine of the Bab. In this connection must be mentioned the partial lowering of the section of the public road over which the line of terraces will pass, and the acquisition and subsequent demolition of the building at the foot of the mountain, which stood as the last obstruction that had to be overcome to make possible the completion of the lower terraces through which the glorious pathway rises up towards the sacred edifice and beyond it to the crest of the hill of God. Also of acute relevance to the progress thus described was the maintenance of a level of contributions to the Ark Projects Fund, which fulfilled the goal for the last year. Clearly, the financial demands in this regard are being met with incessant heroism by rich and poor alike, and must be sustained over the remaining years. At the same time, however, a parallel effort, equally strenuous and sustained, should be simultaneously exerted by the assemblies and friends throughout the world to fill the critical needs of the Baha'i International Fund. Such an auspicious beginning to the 4-year plan, as has been experienced, cannot but inspire confidence in the hearts of the members of our worldwide community that they are fully equipped to execute its requirements as outlined in the messages that launched it, and as elaborated in the plans adopted by their respective assemblies. A further and especially appreciated encouragement as we enter this 2nd year is that circumstances have made it feasible for the re-establishment this Rizwan of the National Spiritual Assembly of Rwanda. This victory over crisis will bring to 175 the number of national spiritual assemblies that will be eligible to participate in the 8th International Baha'i Convention to be held next Rizwan at the Baha'i World Center. How dearly we hope that by then, at the very midpoint of the plan, the Baha'i world will have made a major leap forward in the multiplication of its human resources, the maturation of its spiritual assemblies, and the evolution of its local communities. The opportunity offered by the brief span of time before the century ends is precious beyond all telling. Only a united and sustained effort by the friends everywhere to advance the process of entry by troops can befit such a historic moment. Responsibilities, urgent and inescapable, press upon every institution, every member of a community striving towards its God-promised destiny. As there is only a short period in which to achieve a great deal, no time must be spared, no opportunity lost. Rest assured, dear friends, that the hosts of the Abha kingdom stand ready to rush to the support of anyone who will arise to offer his or her acts of service to the unfolding spiritual drama of these momentous days. The Universal House of Justice.